Jason Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and you are listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC, on Friday, December 29th, right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios and on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. This is the last show of the year. Hope you guys have enjoyed the show so far. We're finishing up our month 4, and we've been trying to bring you health and wellness information to try to give you the best opportunity to be well. And that's what we're talking about tonight. Is we're just putting it all together from what we did last night, and just carrying on. I didn't really get too much into the exercise part of it, and I really wanted to touch on a few of the things there. And then I got to have a great, the last hour and 55 minutes actually. I've been on the phone with my good friend from Ruidoso, New Mexico, Dr. Joe Fraley, and he's going through some goals, end of the year goals, and some getting ready for 2024 himself. And he was just bouncing some things off of me, and we were discussing some issues, and it's so inspiring to me. We've taken the week off here at the Rock, which has been really good for me. It's been good to have some time just to chill out just a little bit, and we go pretty hard throughout the year. We have our 12, 13-hour days pretty much every day that we're working, and we're going at it pretty hard. So it's been pretty nice to have just a little bit of downtime to relax this week. And just refresh, recharge. I know a lot of you guys are doing that same thing, but it's so inspiring to me because it's Friday night. I've been up at the office all afternoon working on some things, trying to get a new set for next year going and for the show. And then Joe wants to call and talk to me, and it's an hour and 55 minutes. He called me at 3:00 and we finished at 5:55. And I said, man, I got to go and got this and to get this show started. So one of the things he said, we were talking about, he's just like, man, I just want to sleep good at night, knowing that I did my best for my patients. And it's so inspiring to me to get to share that time with a guy like that really cares about what he's doing in his practice, that really cares about trying to make sure that all of his systems are in place so that he doesn't miss something, so that he really can create the best opportunity for the people that he takes care of. And so that I'm going to just talk about that for a while tonight. I'm going to talk about that and talk about wrapping it up with the things that we talked about last night. And so if you have a question, if you'd like to send us a text and you're listening to us on the radio, our text line is 806-794-0400. You can send me a text at 806-794-0400. And if you've got a question that you'd like to have answered tonight, then I'd be glad to do that. And if you're on social media and you have a question that you'd like to have answered tonight, I'd be glad to do that as well. So this is kind of a chill program tonight, the last one of the year. And when I was talking to Joe, he said, well, you better, Dr. Fraley, he said, you better get ready because you better get that show started. And I said, yeah, I'm going to tell him about this phone call. That's what some of this is going to be. And so he called me and said, what are your goals for your chiropractic patients? What are your goals for your nutrition patients? What are your goals for your neurology patients? What are you trying to accomplish with them? If you just had a vision of what you would like to have accomplished with them, what would you do? And so we basically talked about that for almost 2 hours, just about those things. And we really do work on those things. We really do work on those things for you. We try to create systems in the office that cover all of those bases so that we're not missing something. And he was giving me an example of a guy that he takes care of, He's taken care of, and then all of the sudden the guy came in. He's been taking care of him for a long time, and he said, "Man, my hands are going numb." And he just happened to have a few extra minutes that day. A lot of times that's the way it works out. And he said, um, so Joe's got an ultrasound machine there in his office, and he scanned him with the ultrasound machine, and he found a blood clot, and it was the blood clot that was causing his hands to go numb. And he told me, he said, for 20 years, if a person says their hands are going numb, you think something's going on with their cervical spine, like there's something's going on in their neck or thoracic outlet syndrome or something that's happening in their shoulders. That's the first thing you think of when people's hands are going numb, that they've got some sort of pressure on that brachial plexus or, the nerves that exit your neck. And I'm like, yeah, that would have been the first place I would have gone to. You don't jump to a blood clot. But and he said, man, that's what I'm talking about, is I want to try to create a system or create systems in the office where I don't miss those things. And that's it's so hard to do. It's hard to do. And it's the same thing. We used to do the same thing coaching football. It was exactly the same deal. You try to coach every single scenario that could possibly happen, so that if it does happen, then you don't get beat. And when you're dealing with human beings and you're in an office, it's more so they don't die. You don't want to miss something that so somebody dies, and so you try to build into your systems in your office. You try to build protocols and systems that work, that cover every single thing that you can possibly think of. And when it comes to the human body, that's a lot of things. There's just a lot of things out there that we do, because being a chiropractor it's so rewarding, and it's such a fantastic job. But I got the whole body from head to toe, from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head. I got all of it, and I've got every system inside of it. Now there's some of them that I don't quite, I don't specialize in OBGYN work, right? That's not something that I specialize in. And I'm not specialized in any system. I'm looking at the entire system. And that's why when we talk about setting our systems up and the things that we talked about last night, that's what we're looking at it from a big picture standpoint of everything that can go wrong. And that's where the subluxation just covers it all. The subluxation is where are you having that interference, right? And so that's where we go to try to build those systems. And from coming off of the physical, chemical, and the mental emotional stresses that we talked about last night, that those physical, chemicals, and mental emotional stresses, some sort of physical, chemical, or mental emotional stress combination is what caused that blood clot that made that man's hands go numb. I can promise you that. It's going to be one of those three things. There's either a physical, chemical, or mental emotional standpoint. And chemical can include toxicity. And so that gets you into the entire blood aspect of a human being. That gets you into all the things that might create some sort of toxicity in the body when you get into that chemical standpoint right there. And we don't just look at one part like most medical doctors do these days and then send you to somewhere else. You go in to see your urologist about something, and then they're not going to look at your heart and say, well, we don't do hearts. You got to go to your cardiovascular person for hearts. And then your cardiovascular person is not going to really look at your shoulder. Then you got to go to your orthopedic guy for your shoulder. And pretty soon in the medical world, they're all specialized. Now they're super, super great at that one thing that they do, but they don't necessarily look at you as a whole person. And in chiropractic, we look at you as a whole person. So we do work on trying to create systems for you that cover you as a whole person. And those are the things that when I say those things, and that's what one of the sentences we talked about just now on the phone call was the reason that I'm such a big omega-6-3 ratio guy, fish oil guy, is because of mitochondria. It's not because of anti-inflammatory aspects of what we get from fish oil. Fish oil, yes, it's great. The EPA is an anti-inflammatory. The EPA inside your fish oil is an anti-inflammatory. That's just a byproduct. That's an extra bonus that we get when we do balance our 6-3 ratios. We get our inflammation down. So and it's a big bonus. It's a big deal. The he was talking about Joe was talking about Dr. Carrick, who's one of the world's top chiropractic neurologists. It teaches most of the neurology students on the planet, and Dr. Carrick has some proper neurological responses to food, and he's got a 4-step process that he looks at, and the number one is inflammatory. He's got inflammatory, and then anemias, where you get into the blood. Do you have enough red blood cells? And then blood sugar regulation, and then toxicity. And so, yeah, that's all those things fit into that physical, chemical, and mental emotional standpoint that we deal with when we got you from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head. And what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to get your mitochondria protected. And if you don't understand that, if you don't understand why that's important, all you got to do is just Google mitochondrial dysfunction and look at all the diseases that go along with mitochondrial dysfunction. It's all of them that like they have something to do with I mean, almost every single thing that's going on inside your body, it has to do with the amount of power that cell has. If that's the power plant of the cell. The mitochondria is the power plant of the cell, and protecting that mitochondria is vital for all organs and all organ systems and your entire body. And that's why there's no bigger fan on the planet than I am of your omega-6-3 ratio. They may be equal, but they're not bigger. I'd be willing to bet you that what you're listening to, if you're listening to this show right now, you're listening to the number one fan on the planet of the omega-6-3 ratio. I really, really, really believe that's important for your health. And when you're trying to set systems up to cover all of the things, because if you've watched any of these bowl games that's going on that this week, one guy makes one mistake and bam, it's a touchdown. You just get one player out of position and bam, it's a touchdown. Well, if there's too many of those that happen in a game, you lose the game, right? Well, the way that I approach your health is that if there's one of those areas that I miss and it goes wrong for you, then I feel bad that I didn't catch it, even though it wouldn't be my responsibility necessarily. Like it's like, I mean, I take it as my responsibility. And so what we kind of talked about in our call was how the overall idea of trying to create that umbrella effect for you, the system of eat well, move well, think well, like Dr. Chestnut talks about, trying to balance your insulin. That's what we're doing with our nutrition program. Our two components of our nutrition program is balance your insulin. So let's talk for a second. What does that mean? Because maybe when I say that, it's not necessarily clear. And I don't know if I did a good job last night of making that really clear. Controlling your insulin. When do you get insulin? When does your body release insulin? Your body releases insulin when you increase your blood sugar. That's when your body releases insulin. Insulin goes up when blood sugar goes up. Okay, so that's we've talked about our guy insulin resistant one. We've talked about him. Hang on a second, I hit the wrong button. On Instagram, one of the guys that we follow is insulin resistance one. Where's my guy? Justin Richards. Justin Richard he does a great job. Um, he just had his last two or three his last two um, reels that he released were one of them um, was rice and my blood sugar. And so what he does is he just eats a bowl. He just eats some rice. He's got one of those little patches on his arm that gives him what his blood sugar is, and so he's going to eat white rice. And then he's going to measure and he's going to see what goes on with his blood sugar with the white rice, just plain old white rice. So there he goes. He eats it and then he waits and he says, "All right, it's been a couple of hours since I've had the rice. Let's see what it did to my blood sugar." And there it goes, a 40 milligram per deciliter spike, 2.2 millimoles. That's a big spike. White rice increases your blood sugar. That's a big spike that you get right there from that. So what did he do? The next reel, he just left the rice overnight in the refrigerator and seeing if one night of that would decrease that insulin. And then he did it. It's basically the same thing. So what happens in your blood now, right? What happens inside of our body when that's going on? Well, what happens is you get a hey, good evening, Lewis. Glad you're with us tonight. I appreciate you listening. Thanks for the comments too. They're great. If you got anything you want me to cover, just holler. That's what we're doing tonight. So when we eat refined carbohydrates, when we eat white sugar, white flour, white potatoes, white rice, those things right there, our blood sugar is going to go up. And when our blood sugar goes up, it's going to do multiple physiological factors inside of our body. It's going to change the way that we handle a calorie. Remember the old days when they used to tell us a calorie was a calorie? You remember that? Remember when they used to tell us that? And they used to say a calorie in and a calorie out. That's the way you lose weight. That was never true in the history of mankind. It was never true. And it's not true today. And let me show you why. And this is Dr. Lustig's work, right? So let me show you why. Let's take 1,000 calories of a steak, and let's take 1,000 calories of a donut. Which one are you going to get insulin with? You're going to get insulin with that donut. And I don't know how many donuts you have to get 1,000 calories of donuts, but I guarantee you I've done it before. I guarantee it. I've had 1,000 calories of donuts just last time I ate donuts, probably. And so, but what is the donut going to do to us? Because it's refined carbohydrates, because it's going to quickly raise your blood sugar. And remember that your blood sugar doesn't need to be high because your heart has to pump that thick, sticky blood throughout your body. And when that blood sugar is high and your heart's having to pump there's mechanisms, there's alarm systems that go off. Any parent that's ever raised a child that their child's like 2 or 3 years old, like we did it one time. We were eating at Joe's Crab Shack when my son was about 2 or 3 years old, and we were sitting out on the patio at Joe's Crab Shack, and we were there with some other couples, so there were multiple people all together, and the back of the patio there had a little gate that had some steps going down it. And then you could go right outside and on the sidewalk of the busy street. Well, we got to sitting there for a second. We were talking and we lost attention on Jacob. And Jacob was a great little kid. Like he didn't cause any trouble in his whole life. He's almost a perfect child. He was just curious. He's just super curious. Well, we lost attention for just a second, and then all of a sudden, that alarm bell went off. Hey, where's Jacob? Like, I thought Leslie had him. Leslie thought I had him. Where was he? We looked up. He had gone out that gate, down the steps, and was walking down the sidewalk over there. We were sitting there like, oh, man, the alarm went off. We're like, hold up, stop. And I had to run quickly. I had to jump around there and get down there and go get him. And he wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just walking down the sidewalk, just wondered where it went. He's like 3 years old. And it was like, whoa, hold up. There was alarms going off is my point, right? Well, inside our bodies, that same thing happens. When that blood sugar starts going up, it starts setting off alarms. The nervous system doesn't like it. The brain doesn't like it. The heart doesn't like it. The blood vessels don't like it. The blood gets super sticky. We've talked about this multiple times. So we're going to start to change the way that we process those calories. We're going to start to change the way that we process things. And that's where we're going to start to hit the receptor on the cell wall. And we're going to be able to, we're going to get that sugar out of the bloodstream. That whole, we've done that whole thing. There's the bloodstream. Here's the cell. There's the glucose gate, but it's not big enough to get the glucose molecule out of there. And so you got this big glucose molecule that's floating around in the bloodstream. That's the kind of sugar we do want. The brain does need glucose in some form or fashion. But so if there's too much of it, we got to get it out of there. So insulin's going to get released. And then insulin's going to come along, and insulin is going to get released by your pancreas, and it's going to dock with that receptor. It's going to open that gate, and now we're going to get that glucose out of the bloodstream. Remember that whole process? We're going to get that glucose out of there so we don't have to pump that thick, sticky blood throughout our body. And that's what we want to get rid of. If we hit that receptor over and over and over again, then we lose our ability to do that. And now we've got to deal with thick, sticky blood. And now this thick, sticky blood, when it gets way down there to our hands and feet, it starts, this gets really thin. And this thick, sticky blood, now all of a sudden that glucose is going to clog up those little pathways right there. And your body's going to end up making new blood vessels to bypass that, to get around it. But the problem is you're going to lose your ability to transition the nutrients and the oxygen down there at the very end. And you've got a nerve down there. There's a nerve that's running along here that's feeding all that. And if you don't believe me, just stick yourself within the finger with a pin and feel how you'll feel it. And when you feel it, that's a nerve. You're feeling a nerve, right? Well, we're not getting any nutrients to that nerve, and now that nerve's going to die, and you're going to get neuropathy, and there's going to be problems with that. You're also, when you don't control your glucose, if you got high insulin, you store all your calories. When you eat that steak, 1,000 calories of steak, you eat what you need, and you just shed the rest of it. It gets flushed out. So there is a difference between the two, and it has to do with this bad boy right there, insulin. So that's why in our nutrition program, it's something that is we're gonna try to balance that insulin. And what Joe and I were talking about was the reason I think that's important is because of all of the things that it covers. Because what he was talking about was, man, I wish I could figure out a system where every bullet point that I could possibly think of gets covered. And man, that's a lot of bullet points when you got from the bottom of the feet to the top of the head. There's a lot of the body right there that we're responsible for, that we could just cover. It's like a blanket cover if we could just control some of this stuff. Right? We can control that insulin. And that's what Dr. Carrick's talking about on his number 3, blood sugar regulation. Yeah, that's blood sugar regulation right there. We want to decrease that glucose load, that glycemic index. That it's the glycemic index is not such a big deal. It's the glycemic load. How quickly do you get glucose into the bloodstream? Do you get it? That's why fiber is so important whenever you're getting that. You got to have that fiber. It slows down that glucose into the bloodstream, and it makes it much easier for us to handle from a nutrition standpoint. But if we can do that one thing, then I don't have to be so specific on all of the bullet points. That it's like, you know what? Like I can eliminate a whole page full of bullet points that I might have to cover if we can control our insulin. If we can make sure that we're not up on this up and down, up and down, up and down pathway that's we eat sugar, we increase insulin, we crash sugar, now we need something to pick us back up, and then we crash sugar, and then we need something to pick us back up, right? We do that all day long, and then over a period of time, now we're kind of in trouble. And if we don't do it, one of the examples that he showed me, he told me about one of his patients was it was the father of some of his patients, and his the he takes care of a family. It's a husband and wife and 4 kids or 6 kids, I think he said. There's 6 kids, and the dad came in. He had some knee problems. He didn't really want to do anything that Joe mentioned. Dr. Fraley, he didn't want to follow any of those processes, and started taking Advil and doing that every day. And 3 years later, he just died of complete liver failure and kidney failure. I think he said liver, but it's going to be those two things together, right? Because that's not an option that is viable. And Joe's like, man, I really don't think that had to happen. Like, I don't think it should have gone that way for him. And but it ended up going that way, and it was it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it went that way, because if he would have followed some of the processes and done some of the things, he could have protected his liver, and that's part of controlling your insulin is also is protecting your liver. If you'll control your insulin, you'll protect your liver. If you'll take your fish oil, you'll decrease your inflammation. Hey, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back right after these messages. Yeah, that's it's we can't tell. We don't know for sure what is coming down the road in front of us with our health, right? But we do have an idea that we can get ourselves into a group. We can say, the likelihood of this happening decreases if your, let's just take your heart rate. Like, your 72 beats a minute is what's considered a normal heart rate, right? If you get fit, you can decrease your heart rate down to to 60 beats a minute, 65 beats a minute. You can decrease it down. So now you've got some cardiovascular fitness. Well, we know that you're you're most likely going to have less problems if your heart rate is 62 beats a minute, because you're fit, not because you're on some sort of drug that's making it be 62 beats a minute, but because of your fitness level. We have a really good idea that you're going to have less problems down the road if you can get your metric right, right? Like, we don't know that you're not going to have a problem down the road. I'm not saying that a person that has a 95 heart rate is going to have a problem down the road. I can't guarantee that. I could just say that it's most likely that the person that has the 62 heart rate is going to have less problems than the person that has the 95 or 99 heart rate, right? So when we do have, to a certain extent, it is kind of a shotgun example of covering all of you. It's like, okay, these are some of the things that you can do. And you say, well, it's kind of a cookie cutter deal. It's like you do the same thing over and over and over again for everybody. Well, the reason that we do the same thing over and over and over again for everybody is because it's the best thing that I know how to do. Like, I wouldn't, why would I change it up for, why would I change it up and do something that I didn't know was as good, or that I knew wasn't as good, by just because I didn't want to be called cookie cutter or whatever. I don't really think so. And I don't think the patients that come here to the Rock, all you guys listening, I don't think you really get that feeling that that's what we're all about. Of course, anytime you need me, you can call me or text me, or we can set up something, and we'll spend as much time with you or whatever as we need to. But in general, what I know for sure is that we've got a less likelihood. There's less likelihood of you having bad things happen to you if you're doing good things. Write that down. That's probably some profound. That's a profound statement right there. It sounds like Coach Dykes or something right there. It's like, oh, really? Less likelihood of bad things happen to you if you're doing good things. Like that's great. Let me get this back on right here. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. This is the last show of 2023. We are wrapping it all up tonight. So we're talking about this conversation that I had with my good friend, Dr. Joe Fraley from Riodoso, one of the smartest guys that I know in chiropractic and in healthcare, period. He's just a super smart dude, has made a great impact on my life and on your life. That's what's one of the great things about Joe, that he knows it, but he doesn't talk about it because he's such a humble human being. But your life is better because he works his butt off. I can promise you that, because he has made my life better and he's made me a better doctor, and he's because he's made me a better doctor, it's benefiting you. And so I told him, I said, man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. You made such an impact in my life, and I really do appreciate the effort, and I just appreciate his effort. We're sitting here on a Friday night for 2 hours, like the rest of the world's skiing somewhere. Like all the other chiropractors I know, there's in Aspen or someplace. They're off in doing all that fun stuff, and we're sitting there trying to figure out how we can make our systems better. And so I really appreciate it. So one of the things that we didn't really get too deep into last night, because we talked about, all right, subluxation, physical, chemical, and mental emotional stress. We want to get all that stuff balanced. We want to decrease that best we can. We want to make sure that we eat well, move well, and think well. And that's Dr. Chestnut's thing. That and and so we want to make sure that all those things are happening. And if we can get those things to happen, and then we've got the five essentials: food, water, oxygen, rest, and nerve energy, right? We covered that last night. And if we can eat better food, if we can get some water, get hydrated, if we can make sure that we're getting some exercise, getting some oxygen. And that's one of the things that Joe asked me. He said, all right, so what are your goal outcomes for exercise, and how much exercise do you think a person needs to do? And man, that's a deep question. It's really, I don't know that anybody really knows the answer to that question. There's some philosophical arguments about how much exercise you need to do. And I am probably at 53 years old, going through my entire lifetime background of athletics and all the things that I've seen and studied. I'm gonna say that it's less than you think. I really think at this point in my life, and I could prove myself wrong here as the years go by, but I really do think that it's not, exercise doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be overdone. It's and I don't have a good answer. I don't have a great answer, and I know that there's it's kind of like there's a new hospital here in town, and I'm not trying to talk trash about the hospital. I'm I've said for years and years, those MDs ought to try to do wellness. That's great. It'd be way better than doing what they're doing. And if they did, it would create a challenge for us wellness people, because they got all the money and they got all the tools, and that's uh, so I'm not talking trash about the hospital. But one of their advertisement, they just keep running this same advertisement, and they talked about evidence based fitness, and it's like, and one of the things Joe asked me is like, okay, well, does being more fit mean that I'm healthy, that I'm more healthy? Just because I'm fitter, does it mean I'm healthier? And the answer to that question is no. That's not what it means. And I can make an argument for that. And I can make an argument for you that I think is fair and can hold up. And this is my argument. And it's just one. This is one of my arguments. But my argument is this: inside the cell, you have mitochondria, and inside the mitochondria, that's the power plant of the cell, the mitochondria. The mitochondria is going to make ATP, which is the power of the cell. That's the fuel. It's like the gasoline for the cell. You got to have it, or the cell's going to die. But every time it makes one ATP, it makes one free radical. So a free radical is an irritated little molecule that's going to attack that mitochondria. So if you have a normal person just sitting, a normal activity person, and that normal person's going to make X number of ATP in a day, and they're going to make X free radicals in a day, right? Whatever that number is. Well, now let's take a triathlon, a triathlete, however we spell that, right? A triathlete. Okay, they're going to make exponentially more ATP because they're doing way more exercise. Let's say it's 10x. Let's say it's 10x ATP. Well, they're also going to make 10x free radicals. Now, how is this person going to handle that? And I know their body has some of its own mechanisms, but this equation, this has to be dealt with. Is this person going to eat 10x blueberries? This athlete that's doing all this high-powered workout, are they going to eat 10x blueberries? Because I don't see the evidence that these people are living longer with less cancer or less heart disease or any of the other things. I don't see the evidence of that. I don't see these 115-year-old triathletes that are running around out there just killing it. I don't see that. So I'm not saying that quality of life and all the different things. I'm just saying that Joe asked me the question, what when it comes to fitness, does increasing your fitness, does that equal increasing your health? That's a difficult question to answer. And it does not. It does not mean that. Is fitness a component of health? Yes. Fitness is a component of health. Do we believe, and is there lots of evidence to say that there's a certain amount of fitness that's important for health? Absolutely. We think that that's true. Now, what is that level? And what's your definition of health? And what are you trying to accomplish with your life? My grandmother-in-law, Leslie's grandmother, was 97 years old. So she didn't work out ever. I don't ever remember her working out. And her husband died in the 1970s. So she lived to 2010, and her husband died in the early 1970s. So she lived a long time by herself and never got remarried. So I didn't know her to walk. I didn't know her to exercise. I didn't know her to do anything. And she lived to be 97. So it's like, okay, what's the argument? Joe was talking about his grandpa was a chiropractor, and he was seeing patients all the way up at 91 years old. And his form of exercise was to go for a walk. So it's a complicated answer, because what I think, and I've tried to explain it on the show multiple times, is you want to be healthy enough to handle whatever you've got to handle today. But you don't know what you're going to handle today. So you got to be fit enough to be able to handle whatever you're going to handle today. You got to be, let's say that what you're going to handle today is you're going to handle picking up a rake from your garden. You're going to go out to the garden and you're going to pick up a rake. Well, let's say you're not fit enough to lean over and pick up a rake, and then you fall and break your hip. Okay, well, you weren't fit enough to handle that task, and because you weren't fit enough to handle that task, you ended up causing damage to yourself that really does cause a problem down the road, right? What if your job is to be a Marine? What if your job is to be a police officer? What if your job is to be a fireman? And what task might you be faced with as a fireman? Well, it's different, right? It's different than what I'm going to be faced with. The things that our firemen, our firefighters that work out there and protect us, the things that they are going to be faced with in 2024, most likely I, as a chiropractor, am not going to be faced with those same things. So my level of fitness, it doesn't necessarily need to match the same level of fitness as the firefighter. It gets complicated. So the question becomes, how much exercise do you need in order to be healthy? And what are the goals? Well, it's not the end all be all, but it is a part of it. And that's where we really think, what I think, and it's based on my lifetime and the last 4 years, because we just finished our 4th year of our Rock Fitness program. And what I really think is the optimal somewhere for most people, if you did a high intensity workout, it's high intensity um, training. They call it HIIT workouts. Um, if you were to do that two to three times per week, and then on the other days, just get some sort of activity on the other days. Do some walking. I think that right there, if you were going to try to set yourself up for a program for next year, I think that right there is probably sufficient for the amount of exercise that a person needs going into 2024. Now, you got to adjust that based on if you're a firefighter, you might want to work out more than that. You might need a heavier weights. You might have to do something. But I think that probably is going to be something. Now, if you got a goal to be win the Ironman triathlon, well, then obviously you're going to want to train different than that. If you got for some reason, if you want to run a marathon, if that's your thing, which I don't really know why, but there's a lot of people that love to do that. If that's your thing, then obviously you're going to train differently than that. If you have something specific to train for, then go ahead. But the high intensity interval training, really the HIIT workout that's what you're it's interval training. That's what you're going for right there, is to get your body, do something hard. You want to do something hard. You want to push your body to try to make your body respond. You want to stress the body. You want to work out to a way to get your heart rate up, to get your blood pressure up. You want to get into it's not an aerobic zone. And those are the things that we talked about, where we were talking about it last night a little bit. When what CrossFit taught me was three different areas of working out. One of them was a really quick, like a 10-second workout. It's going to be high intensity, and it's going to be short duration. So it's like 10 seconds. And that would be like a 1 rep max bench press right there, just something really quick. And then the next one is where you're going to go in a cycle like this, where it's going to be about 3 minutes. You're going to go hard and it's going to spike at 1 minute, and it's going to be about a 3-minute workout right there. And those two are your anaerobic systems. And then your last one is your aerobic system, which kind of spikes like that, and then it goes for a long period of time. And this is the idea that you can actually measure. That's why I love the CrossFit stuff and so well. But if you were to take exercises and say, here's what I did there, this is what I did there, this is what I did there, and you graph that out and you made a mark, then that's where you would say that the area under the curve is considered to be fitness. And now we can measure it, because we could do a pre-exercise to start you out, and then we could put you through a program over 3-4 months, and then we could put you through a post-exercise. And what we would assume is that you would actually increase this 1 rep max. You would increase your 3-minute exercise. You'd max out better, and your aerobic capacity would increase. So now when you mark the area under the curve, it would be greater, so your fitness would be increased. From an analytical standpoint, I think that's great. And that's what irritates me about the whole, well, we do evidence-based workouts. Well, I guarantee you there's more evidence with CrossFit workouts than anything else on the planet. All you got to do is look at a CrossFitter that's evident that they're fit. And try it. It's great. It'll get you fit. And you could do that at whatever age you are, and you can do it at wherever you are. So you could build these exercises for yourself. You could make your own exercise program up for yourself, and and do this. You guys want to do it at home, you want to go to your own gym, do this little 3-minute one like that. Do a 3-minute one with a 1 minute max that lasts 3 minutes. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, like 2 minutes and 30 seconds to 3 minutes. And do that 4 to 5 times. Get you a set of movements. So you could do a push press, you could do an air squat, you could do a push up, you could do a sit up, you could do a snatch, you could do something with a kettlebell, you could go for a jog, you could walk really fast. You could do something like that. That is a pretty decent thing. And then on the other days, do something aerobic. Go for a long walk. And aerobic means that you're able to have a conversation while you're going through it. That's one of the ways you measure. Aerobic is means with oxygen, but you got to be able, if you can talk while you're doing it, you're probably in that zone. That's really how you kind of measure. It's more of a 70% of your max type of deal. It's a lower intensity workout, but it lasts for a longer duration. And so this combination right here, that's pretty decent stuff. That's what we've been doing basically for 4 years. We do almost none of this single power stuff, but we do this 2 or 3 times a week. We do it twice here. And sometimes Leslie and I'll come up on Saturdays and do it 3 times a week. And that's worked out pretty good, I think. And if you're out there and you want to do that, you could do that for yourself. Go for a walk on those other days, and then twice a week, do 4 or 5 rounds of those movements. Just set you a little timer. Do something that you can repeat and repeat it for 3 minutes, and just say, hey, I'm going to do. When you're trying to build muscle, if you want to increase your muscle, you want to increase your weight, your load. But in general, to make it not super specific, but if you could get somewhere between 8 to 12 reps, that's how much weight you want to have. So let's just say you're doing a shoulder press and you're going to press the bar with just the dumbbells above your head. Well, if you get a 5-pound dumbbell and you can do that 25 times and it's not any big deal, then you need to increase the weight. That would be something that you could do, is increase your weight right there. If I did 10 pounds and I could do it 20 times, and if I did 15 pounds and I could do it 15 times, and then if I just kept going up, and then I got to 20 pounds, and then I got to 25 pounds, and it's like, man, it's hard to get that 8, 9, 10. That's kind of that. Now that's how that works. You increase your weight until you can get into that rep count, and that's a pretty decent little rep count for you. And then mix up your parts. In CrossFit, and I'm not a CrossFit affiliate. It's CrossFit style workouts that we do here. I am a level 1 certified CrossFit guy, but this is not a CrossFit gym. It's a combination of multiple things that I've learned over the years. But I think that's pretty decent right there from a fitness standpoint. I think it's something that is doable. It's something that I've seen work in multiple levels with multiple fitness people. I've seen that workout, and I think that is a good component to working yourself out. If you want to know how to get just a general rule of where your take 220, say 220 minus your age. So let's say you're 50 years old. So now you're at 170. And then that's how you get, you take 220 minus your age, and as in general terms, and then that's 170. So now the percentage of that tells you what kind of intensity you're at. So 70% is aerobic. 85%, now you're getting into that high intensity interval training. There's 2 I's and 1 T. Yeah. So that's where you can kind of gauge it. Well, now look at that for a second. 220. Let's change that and let's say 220 minus 80, and that's going to get us into the 140 right there. Now, 85%, 85% of 140. I'm going to cheat. That's 119. So you would be, if your heart rate got up to 119, you'd be in that zone if you're 80 years old, right? So if you're and you're probably going to get there pretty dang fast if you're 80 years old. So be careful. Be careful with what you're trying to do with yourself. And that's why that's why when I finally decided to get fit in 2019 and I finally made the decision, what I went to somebody who figured all this, that who knew all this and was trained in all this, where I didn't have to figure it out. And it's the way to do it. It really is. There's very few of us that have the discipline to be able to handle it. And even the ones that do have the discipline, that you might have really high discipline in lots of areas of your life. You may be a super mom or a super dad or a super parent or great at your job or whatever. You just don't want to take the time to work this stuff out and figure out what those exercises need to be and all that sort of thing. And that's where having someone that does that for you can be super valuable to you. You can do your thing, but let someone else figure out all this stuff for you and make sure that you're doing them all properly. That's I really think there's some validity in that idea. I know for me it worked out great. It's really been it's really been great, from a workout standpoint. And then you can get and then you add your nutrition to it and you check your nervous system. That that's where fitness is a component of health. The more fit you are doesn't mean you're healthy. Just like being skinny doesn't mean you're healthy, right? We've talked about that multiple times. That's why I don't think it's super important to get caught up on the scale. The scale itself gets you depressed because when you're working on the just off of the scale, then your body fluctuates. It goes up and down. But if you're doing right and you're doing the things that you're supposed to do, you can improve your health and you can prepare yourself to battle whatever it is that's coming your way down the road. You can be prepared to handle any of those things that come at you. And that's really what we're trying to do with health. We're trying to do it from all those components. So eat well, move well, and think well, as Dr. Chestnut says. Eat well is controlling that insulin and balancing those omega 6s and those omega 3s. And it gets more complicated than that, but that's just a simple version of it. Then eat well, move well, the exercise stuff. And then that last part, don't forget about that last part because it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Number one thing you can do for your brain is to be social. Get social activity. It's good for your brain. It helps your brain function better. And this whole thing starts in the brain anyway, right? But mental emotional stress is has multiple components to it. And one of them is to move your feet and get your body going so that if you get your body going, you'll increase your chances of handling that. That's a vital component of mental emotional stress is to get your body going. Well, you want to work on handling that mental emotional stress. Find the balance. That's why we it's all the things. It's the old folks, remember the old timers, toxins, traumas, and autosuggestion. Autosuggestion. How are you talking to yourself? How stressed out are you? What are you stressed out about? Do you have a plan to handle that sort of thing? Don't forget when you're working on that stress, that mental emotional stress, don't forget that the big part of that mental emotional stress is your physical activity. Your nutrition and your physical activity has a lot to do with that right there. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the show or enjoying the show. We're going to keep working at it and try to get better at it. I hope you guys have a fantastic 2024. I hope it goes your way. If we can help you at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, you are not alone. You do not have to do this alone. We're here to help. And if you need some help, let us know. Otherwise, you guys have a happy new year, and I will see you. I will see you on Tuesday. All right.